All right, we'll now be working on 11.1 measures of center and variation, part 2. All right, so the first one, find the value of x. So we did a problem similar to this on the previous lesson, but last time it was mean, not median. So we'll now figure out how can we figure out what x is equal to when we are given the median, right? And so let's set this up like we normally would have, right? 30, 45, x, and 100. All right, so the first thing we can do is we know that the median is going to be around here, right? Our median is going to be right here, somewhere in the middle, right? And remember, median is whatever is in the middle. And in this case, we don't have a middle because we have even numbers. So this is why we can't find a median. If we go 1, so this would be the first one, 1, 2. And then if we go this way, 1, 1, 2, right? So there's no middle here because we have even numbers. We have even numbers here. So that means we're going to have to take these two numbers and divide it by half, right? Divide it by 2 to find what the middle of this is. And our median is equal to 51, right? So if we take these two numbers and we add them up, 45 plus x divided by 2, that's how we find our median. What should our median be equal to? 51. So let's plug that in right here. And now we need to get rid of this 2, right? So to get rid of this 2, we need to multiply the whole thing by 2 over 1. And remember, this 2 does not distribute to 45 and x. It cancels out this 2, right? These 2 divided by 2 is 1. So that means we're left with 45 plus x. So remember, do not distribute this 2 to 45 and x. This 2 and 2, when you divide 2, when you have 2 divided by 2, it equals 1. And now we have 51 times 2 over 1, which is equal to 102. And now we need to isolate x, right? That was our goal here. We need to get x by itself so we can figure out what x represents. So now, to get x by itself, we can subtract 45 on both sides. And why are we subtracting by 45 real quick? Well, it's the opposite of a positive 45. So we're going to subtract 45, which leaves us with 102 minus 45, which is 57. And that means our x is equal to 57. So if we rewrote this, it would look like this, 30, 45, and x is equal to 57. So let's write that here. And 100. All right? And if you're not sure about this, you can add these two up and divide it by 2 to see if our median does end up being 51. All right, so that's how you would find the median if you give the x when you're given a median. All right, so now we're going to get into something a little more complicated. So now we'll be working on finding the range and standard deviation. A measure of variation is a measure that describes the spread or distribution of a data set. One measure of variation is the range. The range of a data set is the difference of the greatest value and the least value. So if this doesn't make sense, I will explain it just in a bit. So finding a range. Here's an example. 2 reality cooking shows select 12 contestants each. The ages of the contestants are shown in the tables. Find the range of the ages for each show. Compare your results. So the range, once again, is the difference between the greatest and the least value. The greatest value and the least value. Right? So for this question, the first thing we're going to need to do is to, let me write this down here, step 1. So step 1 for both of these, right? The steps that I show you right now will apply to both of them, right? These are two different shows. So step 1, we're going to order it from greatest to least. Wait, where did my pen go? Technical difficulties. 1 second. Order from greatest to least. Oh, my bad. From least to greatest. Right? So we're going to go ahead and order these from least to greatest. And then step 2, we're going to find the range by finding the difference. And go ahead and copy this down in your notes too. It will help a lot. Finding the difference between the greatest value and the least value. So let's go over these 2 steps real quick. So step 1, order from least to greatest. Step 2, find the range by finding the difference between the greatest value and the least value. All right, so let's go ahead and start this. So keep this in mind. Make sure you write this down because I won't have too much space to work here, so I'm going to have to move away from this. All right, so let's start with show A. So show A. Let's order this first, right? That is our first step. We need to order from least to greatest. So 19 is first, right? This is the smallest one. Then our next smallest is 20. And I would recommend circling it or checking it off after you write it down so that you don't accidentally repeat the same number 2 times. Notice that there's 20 here twice. You might have forgotten it, or I might have forgotten it here. So you need to make sure to circle it. 20, 20, and then 21. And then our next one's going to be 22. And you're just going to go ahead and circle each one as you write it. And this is what your ordered list should look like. I'm running out of space here. Oh. 30 and then 31. Okay. So now, from here, we're going to find the difference between the greatest number and the smallest number, right? And the biggest number here is 31. So we're going to do this. 31 minus the smallest number, 19. 31 minus 19 is equal to 12. And this means that our range is 31 to 19. Range 31 to 19, which is the same thing as 12. Okay. Now let's try our second one, right? Show B now. So same thing. You're going to go ahead and check it off once you use it. Smallest number is 19. Second smallest number is 20. And make sure to circle or check it off. 21, 22, 22, 24. This is what your list should look like. All right. So now, once again, we're going to find our range. Remember, our range is the biggest number subtracted by the smallest number. So range 48 and 19. And when we subtract that, we get 29 years. I should write years up here too. So, to answer the question, remember the question said Two reality cooking shows selects 12 contestants each. The ages of the contestants are shown in the tables. Find the range of the ages for each show and compare your results. So we found the range of the ages for each show, right? And now we need to compare our results. So let's go ahead and compare these two results. And when we look at it, we can notice, let's write this down over here. So we notice the range of the ages for show A is 12 years, right? And secondly, let me see. And then the range of ages for show B is 29 years. So that means, think about it for a second, all right? So let's look at this. 12 years versus 29 years. That means that show B has a wider range of ages, right? Whereas show A, it's not as diverse, right? So for show B, the ages are very spread out. So let's write that down. The ages for show B are spread out. And that's what you would write. All right, let's move on to the next one. All right, so now we have standard deviation. Okay, let me fix something real quick. Notice there's an issue here. I don't know how this line moved down here. Okay, let's move this down. This should be right here. And while I'm doing this, go ahead and make your own table. We'll need to use a table in the future. Okay, let's get started. So a disadvantage of using the range to describe the spread of a data set is that it uses only two data values. A measure of variation that uses all the values of a data set is the standard deviation. So the standard deviation of a numerical data set is a measure of how much a typical value in the data set differs from the mean. The symbol sigma represents the standard deviation. It is read as sigma. It is given by the following formula. This looks very complicated, but we'll simplify it down in this table down here. So it'll make a little bit more sense. So let's take a look at this formula that we have right here. So n, right, this n right here, is right here. It is the number of values in the data set. So, for example, if we were using the previous example that we had up here, so if we're using show A, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 2. We have 12 data sets. So that means our n would have been 12. All right? And the deviation of a data value, x, right, is the difference of the data value and the mean of the data set. So x minus x bar. So notice this one is x bar right here. X bar. So the very first step is to find the mean, or x bar. Step 2 is to find the deviation of each data value, right? And this deviation is found by x minus x bar. And this, if you're confused, this x is the value that you originally have. So if we take an example like this one, it would be 20. So let's do that. So if you have 20, you would use this 20 for this part right here, right? You would replace it with this x. And then you will square each deviation. So once you find the answer for this, you will square it. And then find the mean of the square deviation. So just like you normally do with the mean, where you add it up and you divide it by the number of terms that you have, you do the same thing here. You add them all up and you divide it by the number of terms. And whatever your answer is here is called the variance. And then you take the square root of the variance for step 5. And a small standard deviation means that the data is clustered around the mean. And a large standard deviation means that the data is more spread out, right? It deviates, it's farther away. So let's start with an example. So make sure to create a table. Okay, let me see if I can make this a little bit smaller. Oh, I can't. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we need to find what our average is. And to do that, we're going to need to add everything all up, add up all these values, and divide it by the number of terms. So in this case, go ahead and try it on your calculator. Let's write that down here, step 1. We're going to add these all up, and if you add them all up, you should get 300. And now, how many terms do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we're going to divide that by 12. Oh, and I should label this. Let me rewrite this real quick. X bar, right? That's going to be our X bar, or also known as our mean. So this is our step 1. And 300 divided by 12 is equal to 25. So now we're just going to go ahead and write 25 for all of these. 25, 25, 25, and so forth, right? And next, what we're going to do is, let me fix some of these real quick. Let's fix some of these lines. 25. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our x, which is this one, right? Notice that this x is exactly the same as this x. So if that helps, make sure to look at these. X bar, right? So we can take our x, 20. Let's do it on the side right here. I don't have enough space to do it right here, but if you create a table that's big enough, you can do it within the same one. So step 2 is to subtract x minus x bar, or our average. All right, so let's do our first one. So 20 minus 25 is equal to negative 5. So we're going to plug that in right here. Place that with negative 5. And we'll do the same thing for 29 minus 25. So 29 minus 25 is equal to 4. So let's write 4 right here. And now we're going to do 19 minus 25. And you're going to keep doing this. And this is equal to negative 6. Go ahead and pause the video and try to do it yourself. $20 minus 25 is negative 5. 21 minus 25 is negative 4. 31 minus 25 is equal to 6. And once you subtract all of them, you're now going to square everything in here. All right, so let's go ahead and square it. Negative 5 squared is 25. So I'll write it down right here too. Step 3, we're going to square everything. So let's take the first one, negative 5, right? And this negative 5 represents this entire thing right here. So you can replace it with negative 5. Let me do a different color. Negative 5 squared is equal to 25. So I'm going to write that down right here. And we'll do the same thing. 4 squared is equal to 16. Negative 6 squared is equal to 36. And you can do that for all of them. Negative 3 squared, 9. 0 squared is 0. 2 squared is 4. 2 squared is 4 again, 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25, negative 5 squared is also 25, negative 4 squared is 16, 6 squared is 36. And if you had a hard time with this, make sure to pause the video and try to do this yourself. It's really important. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to add these all up. Okay? Let me erase this. So that's our step 4. All right, let's get started. So step 4 now. So for step 4, we're going to add these all up again. All right, so let's do that. 25 plus 16 plus 36 plus 9 plus 0 plus 4. And if you find yourself getting confused here, go ahead and make sure to check it off every time you use them. Plus 4, because when you add similar numbers, you might skip one of the numbers. So make sure to check it off if you have a hard time with that. Plus 16 plus 25 plus 25 again, plus 16, plus 36. All right, so now we're going to take all of this and divide it by the number of terms that we have. And if you count it, we have 12 terms. So this is going to help us find our variance. Let me write that up here. I forgot to write it. This is our variance, which is also known as the mean of the square deviations. All right, so now if we add these all up and divide it by 12, let's do that. So if you add these all up, you get 212 divided by 12, which is equal to 17.7. And now what we're going to do is we're going to find the square root of the variance. Remember, this is our variance. It's not our final answer yet. So we need to find the square root of it. Oh. So let's go ahead and do that. So 17.7, the root 17.7 is equal to approximately 4.2. And our standard deviation is 4.2. Standard deviation. And this means that the typical age of each contestant on show A differs from the mean by about 4.2 years. So let's go back to our original question. It says, find the standard deviation of the ages for show A in example 3. Use a table to organize your work and interpret your result. So this 4.2 means that the average age of a contestant differs about 4.2 years. Okay? So that's what standard deviation is. I will also post an extra video to help explain what standard deviation is, because it is a little confusing. All right, I hope that helped, and let me know if you have any questions, since this topic is pretty confusing. So let me know, and then watch that supplemental video if you're still confused on this, and let me know how it goes.